This tutorial is either a re-edit of an older tutorial just to sort of trim down the size of it, or is a complete remake if Affinity Photo, Affinity Designer has changed quite significantly from when I originally made it, and tools are not quite working in the same way as they used to.
Hello, my name is Carl Surrey, and this tutorial is about adding an intense effect to a portrait. I'm sure you could use it on other things, than portraits, but the tutorial that I'm adapting was for that for portraits, so I'm going to sort of stick with that theme. Now, this Photoshop tutorial was a written tutorial on the website called photographypla.net or Photography Planet. And what they've done, they've used this picture of this lady here, which that is the start image, and if I just drag this quickly down the bottom, and this is their finished image. It's much more sort of grainy and intense. And the written tutorial has all the various different options that you can use. Now, Photoshop and Affinity Photo, although they have similar tools, and in some cases almost exactly the same tools, but wherever they are similar or even the same, they do things slightly differently. So there are occasions where I'm guessing some settings, and if you don't like my best guesses, you're quite happy to make some alterations to suit what your personal tastes. I'll come back to Affinity Photo, and I'm going to use this image of this gentleman here, and I got this from Pixabay.com, and I will add a link to this image in the description for the video in case you want to use the same one. Now, this is more of a personal opinion of mine, but I think this effect will probably work better on images of men rather than women, because I would imagine a lot of women wouldn't want their pictures intensified and brought out all the grain and the detail, whereas I would imagine a man would be less bothered by it, and it probably makes him look more rugged, for want of a better phrase. So this would be the start image, and the end image I got was this, which I'm hoping you can sort of see as a much more intense finish. Now I have got another picture open here, but I'll look at that later, because I am going to show you how it can look on a picture of a woman, and I think on this particular image it looks quite good. So let's go back to the start image. Now, I would advise you making a macro of this, so you don't have to keep remembering what it is that you did to get a certain effect. If you make a macro of this, you will have it always. Now, I have made a macro of this, and I will be adding that macro to the file section of both the Facebook groups, so you can use it if you don't want to follow the tutorial. But if you want to follow the tutorial, you can then make a macro of it and even alter the adjustments slightly to get a different effect. So I'm not going to go through making the macro thing again, because I've made videos before on how to make macros. So the first thing I need to do to start this procedure is to duplicate the background. This is mainly only so for comparison. It's not, as far as I can tell, it's not 100% necessary, but it was in the original tutorial, so I'm going to do the same thing. So you can either right click this layer and come to duplicate, or you can just press Ctrl and J and it will duplicate that layer. The next I want an adjustment layer, and that adjustment layer is shadows and highlights, which is this one here, and I'm going to move both of these to the right up to 20%. I'm just going to type these in rather than try and move the sliders and get them in the correct place. And then I will just click on the X to make that a layer above these two background layers. And next thing I want to do is I want to make a layer that is all these combined. So you can either right click and come to merge visible, or you can come to layer, merge visible, or you can use a shortcut key if you've got like 900 fingers of Control, Alt, Shift and E. And this will just make a new layer that is all these layers combined. And to this layer I'm going to add a filter, and I'm going to come to sharpen and high pass. Now in the original written tutorial they use the unsharp mask, which I did try, but I really couldn't see any major effect happening, so I went for the high pass option because I personally could see a difference. You may want to stick with the unsharp mask option. So I bumped the high pass up to 40 pixels and had a tick in monochrome, and then just click apply, and then I'm going to change the blending mode of this layer to overlay, and this is the sort of layer that's adding a lot of the details. If I sort of click this on and off, I'm hoping you can see that that adds a lot of the extra detail in the image. So the next adjustment we're going to need is a levels adjustment. Levels. Right. Now the levels adjustment is one of the hardest ones I find to adapt from Photoshop tutorials, because it really does do it in quite a different way. In fact, I prefer the Photoshop way personally, but that's just my personal choice. But what I did was I moved the black level by 2%, the white level by 80%, and the gamma by 1.5. And then I'll just close that down. And next I'm going to add a brightness contrast adjustment, and I'm just going to alter the contrast, and I'm going to make this 20%. Next I'm going to come to the hue saturation luminous adjustment, or HSL adjustment, and I'm going to drop this down to -35. There we go, -35. And then, because that has dropped some of the colours down, but now I'm going to boost some of the colours by coming to the vibrance adjustment, and I'm going to push this up to 25. I'll try it with the slider. Very hard to get a precise figure using a slider. There we go, 25%, and close that down. So the last adjustment I'm going to add is the gradient map. Now I only want 2 stops on this, so the middle one is highlighted, so I'll just delete that one. So we have the 2 stops. Now normally the gradient map is used to make the shadows in an image one colour and the highlights in the image another colour. But I want these shadows and highlights to have the same colour. So first of all, I'm going to alter the one that's currently selected, which is the shadows, or this red one here. I'm going to click on the colour, and the colours I'm going to pick is 251 in the red, 217 in the green, and 127 in the blue, giving this sort of yellow creamy effect. I'm going to click and highlight the blue circle here, and again click on the color option, and again I'm going to change the color to the same numbers, so it's 251, 217 and 127, so it has the same yellow effect here. And then I'm going to change the opacity to 50%, and I'm going to change the blending mode to soft light. So that is basically just adding that colour across the whole range of shadows and highlights. And that is the finished result. So you could then just save and export this image under a new name, or if you're making a macro, stop recording and save the macro into your macro library. So as I said at the beginning, I just want to show you how this would look on another image, and it is this, again, this image I got from Pixabay.com, and I'm going to use the macro that I made earlier for this. So I'll open my library, and if I click on the intense portrait effect, which will do everything that I've just made in this tutorial, and there you can see how that effect has worked on this image. So if I come back to the layers here, I can just highlight that bottom layer and then turn on and off everything that effect has had on this image, which I think, as you can tell, it sort of really does intensify the look of this lady. So that is the end of the tutorial. Hopefully you have made a macro. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.